Well, as you know, coming up November the 3rd, the Supreme Court is going to hear oral arguments in a case called New York State Rifle and Pistol Association versus Bruin. And I'm very pleased today to be speaking with one of the main plaintiffs in this case, Mr. Robert Nash, who has tried and so far has been unsuccessful at being able to exercise his right to bear arms in New York State. Rob, thank you so much for your time today.
Thanks for having me, Cam.
Absolutely. So I've got to ask you, first of all, because one of my hobbies over the past few weeks has been anytime I get a few free minutes, reading some of the dozens of amicus briefs that have been filed in support of your case, the dozens of briefs that have been filed in opposition to your argument. How closely are you following along with all of these, these amicus briefs and all of these legal filings that are coming out? Or are you just sort of sitting back and saying, all right, we're going to wait and see what the court does?
I've read a few, and it got overwhelming. So, I'm just going to wait and see what the 9 justices decide. It's you're just going to hear opinions one way or the other, but it's really what's going to happen with the justices' decision.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about you.
Sure.
I'm curious. So, first of all, what made you decide that you wanted to apply for a carry license? And did you know how draconian and subjective New York's laws were when you started that process?
I knew it was a long process. I grew up in New York State. I've always lived in New York State, and just like anything else you do in New York State, there's a lot of red tape to go through. But I felt like having a clean record and just following the steps, that everything would go smooth. But it didn't in the end.
Yeah. So what actually happened? What is the process like? I mean, if you are a gun owner in New York State, and you decide, all right, I want to be able to exercise my right to carry, what do you have to do?
Well, I mean, it's a long and lengthy pistol permitting process. So, the initial step would be to take a safety class. You need 4 references, background check, fingerprinting, submit that with a few $100 and then wait. So you're waiting. I waited about 4 or 5 months, and I was issued a pistol permit, but it had restrictions on it saying that I can only use it for hunting and target shooting.
Okay, so not for self-defense. You can carry this gun, but not to protect your life. I find it interesting as well, by the way, that you had to submit, and this isn't unusual. I mean, this is the process where you live. You have to submit character references. People who can attest to your good character. Rob's a good guy. He's not going to hurt anybody.
Yeah, he's not going to shoot anybody. I've known him my whole life. He's a good guy, and if it was my decision, I would let him carry a pistol. Something like that. And they can write it any way they wanted, but you had to submit that with your initial request to have a pistol permit.
It's amazing. I'm just trying to imagine having to provide character references before we exercise any of our other constitutional rights.
Yeah.
And what the reaction will be from groups like the American Civil Liberties Union. So you provide the character references, you sit back and wait, months go by, and then you get your restricted permit, which is not what you wanted.
Right, but it was just part of the steps that we have to take here.
Okay, so when then did you decide? Okay, I'm going to try for my unrestricted license.
Well,
what I would consider a license to carry.
Sure, right, and yeah, New York State we call it unrestricted. Everyone else probably calls it license to carry, concealed carry. But it was my plan all along. It was just that I knew I had to go through all these steps. I mean, there was really no reason for me to buy a pistol to go hunting, right? I mean, I'm not going to use a 3-inch barrel to shoot a deer, right? So it was my plan all along to get a concealed carry. I just knew I had to go through all these, steps to do it.
Okay, so did you help me out here? Because again, New York's laws are so strange to me, living in the Commonwealth of Virginia. When you apply for a permit, do you say I'm applying for an unrestricted permit, and then they get back to you and say, well, we're not going to give you one, we're going to give you a restricted permit? I mean, how does that work?
So not in my county.
Okay.
In my county, you have to, I'm in Rensselaer County, which is upstate New York, just east of Albany, the capital. You have to start out with an unrestricted, or with a restricted that says hunting and target. There are other counties where you can get an unrestricted right from day one, which I learned later. And there's a lot of discrepancies county to county, and there's a lot of discrepancies within each county.
And you ran into that issue as well, right? The discrepancies within each county, because
Yeah,
in
yeah.
Rensselaer County, who is it that you're actually applying to? Who do you submit your
So
application
you
to?
have to the judge, to a judge. It's a there's 6 judges, I believe, in Rensselaer County. You submit that to the county clerk. It gets looked at by your judge. You get assigned a judge randomly, as far as I know. And I got assigned one, that tends to say no to everybody.
And there are other judges in Rensselaer County who don't have that attitude.
Right, exactly. So, I learned this later on, obviously, but I submitted a letter to him asking him to remove my restriction based on local crime in the area. There was a string of robberies, which you'll see in the case. And it was my reason for the robberies and just for self defense reasons to have those restrictions removed. And he said no. And other judges in the county, I could have submitted the same letter and they would have said yes, in a minute. And, even lesser reasons. I've had other people that I know just say they want to protect their wife and kids, which and they get approved. Same county, different judge.
That is, again, I live in a state that's a shall issue state, meaning if you meet the permitting, you meet the training requirements, you're legal to own that gun, you're going to get a carry license. And I think that's the way it should work. I mean, we're talking again about a constitutional right here, and it is what you're telling me is it is up to the whim of the individual issuing authority, whatever
Exactly.
judge gets your case or the county sheriff, whatever their policy happens to be, determines whether or not you get to exercise your constitutionally protected right.
Right. So, it was then when I said to myself, this isn't right. I didn't know anything about the laws the way they were written. He kept talking about proper cause. I had to go in the judge's chambers to ask this. And all he really did was read my letter back to him and said, you don't have proper cause. I didn't know what that meant at the time. But I just knew I was upset because I had already had friends that have gone through in the same county and other counties that had lesser reasons, didn't take their advanced safety class, which I did, which is optional. But I figured if I took that, I'm a shoe-in, clean record, advanced safety class. I got this in the bag. I just need to go and do it, and I'll get a yes, but I got a no. And it was then that I said that this law is not right.
So how did you get involved in this fight? You knew you wanted to challenge it. Did
Right.
you immediately go to court? How did this case come
No, I
about?
mean, I sat on it just upset, didn't know what to do, knew if I got a lawyer, it wouldn't be enough because it's a bigger picture than that. Like this has affected millions of New Yorkers. So I didn't know what to do. I didn't do anything for probably about 6 months. I was already a member of the New York State Rifle and Pistol Association. I said, let me try and contact them. I emailed them and I got an email back from Tom King. And he says, I know all about this. He says, you're not the only one. He said, but I don't know if we have a case yet. Let me talk to somebody at the NRA. And he did. He got back to me right away. And he says, look, I think we have a case. Here's the roadmap they want to go with. He says, but are you willing to stick your neck out? Because this is going to be a high profile, your name's going to be everywhere kind of thing. And without hesitation, I said, yes.
Any regrets so far?
Never. Not yet.
No, good,
Not
good.
yet. Yeah.
I'm glad to hear that because your name, is out there. I mean,
Right.
Rob, you're going to the Supreme Court. Your
Can
case
you
is going to
believe
be
it?
heard in the highest court in the land. I mean,
Right.
when you think about that, especially given the fact that the court has been reluctant to take Second Amendment cases in recent years, what are you feeling when you think about the fact that in less than a month from now, these 9 justices are going to be considering your case
Yeah.
and whether or not you get to carry a firearm for self-defense?
It still really has the magnitude of it. I don't think really has hit me yet, which is probably a good thing. I mean, I never thought. I knew we had a good case. I didn't think that it would, get this far. I mean, even once it got to the Supreme Court, there was such a slim chance that it would get heard, especially being a Second Amendment case. I mean, it hasn't been since what 2010, with McDonald versus Chicago. You know, who thought? Who would have thought? We had the right justices in place, and I had a good feeling about it that we would get granted cert, and we did, thanks to those justices.
Absolutely. So, what has life been like for you since this lawsuit has been filed? Have you been able to stay sort of under the radar? Have you had gun control groups waving their fists at you? What's
Really,
life been like?
really, really, it's been normal life so far. It really haven't gotten. It was one reporter that called me right after April 26th, after we got granted cert, and I just didn't return their call. And you're my first interview, Kim.
Wow. Well, listen, I appreciate that. And it's, this is an important issue for people, whether or not you're a gun owner, whether or not you're a Second Amendment advocate. I hope that people understand as they've been listening to this process, whether you like the right to keep and bear arms or not, it is a right.
Correct.
And it is a right that is being denied the average citizen in New York. I mean, again, Rob, you went above and beyond. You did things that you didn't have to do in order to improve your odds of getting approved. But ultimately, it's not up to you. It's
Right.
up to the personal feelings of a judge or a county sheriff as to whether or not you and others get to exercise their rights. Meanwhile, what happens if you decide, you know what, I'm going to violate the law. I know I don't have my unrestricted license, but I'm going to go ahead and carry a gun anyway.
Yeah.
You'd be facing a felony charge if you were caught, right?
That's absolutely right. Yeah, if I had my pistol on me now and I walked out my front door, I can get arrested right on my doorstep.
With a mandatory minimum prison sentence attached to it as well.
I'm sure you're right. I'm sure you're right. Yeah.
That's the thing that just it gets me living in a shall issue state, and we've got we've had more gun control laws put on the books in Virginia the past couple of years than we've had in the past couple of decades. But thankfully, I do live in a state where it is at least shall issue. I'd love to live in a constitutional carry state, but at least the state can't play these types of games with my right to keep and bear arms in a shall issue system. Is that what you're ideally not? Again, the Supreme Court is considering, a fairly narrow question about whether or not your Second Amendment rights were violated and the rights of your co-plaintiff were violated by not getting this unrestricted license.
Right.
But what's your ideal outcome when you look at the Supreme Court here? What would you like to see the Supreme Court say?
I mean, I don't have any dreams of this, having a countrywide effect to, really constitutional carry at this point. I just want to get New York State's law fixed.
Yeah.
That was my goal from day one. I don't think that proper cause should be in there at all. And I hope that the justices, when they're reading New York State's law and comparing it to the Second Amendment, I hope that they deem that this proper cause requirement violates the Second Amendment, which I think they should. That's my number one goal at this point. I mean, and the rest of these laws is, probably somebody else's fight other than mine.
Well, we know that the fight is going to continue. Absolutely.
Right.
And honestly, I mean, I hate to say it, I don't want to pour cold water on this, but even if we do get a good decision, I suspect, and I'm pretty sure you suspect as well, that the state of New York is going to continue to try to play these games however they can.
Right.
Because unfortunately, the powers that be still don't see this as a right. I think they treat it as a privilege that they can, dole out to those that they deem acceptable. And I don't think that attitude is going to change. Hopefully, again, this court decision is strong enough that they won't be able to play those types of games. But really, until we get to the point that the gun control fans in this country will at least acknowledge that this is a fundamental right that we're talking about.
Right.
We're going to have to continue these fights to have our rights accepted and to be able to exercise these rights no matter where we live.
I agree.
Well, Rob, listen, again, I appreciate you spending some time with us. Do you have anything else that you want to tell, gun owners out there, non-gun owners out there? What do you want folks to know?
All I'd like to say is, just because you think you're an ordinary citizen, like you can still do something about something, whether it be a gun law or any other law. If you don't believe it's right, then fight for it. Follow it in the meantime, obviously, but you can make a difference. And if it takes it going to the Supreme Court, then that's what it takes. But if you believe it's not right, then fight it.
Well, you are certainly an example of that. And Rob, listen, I hope that we can touch base with you. It's going to be a few months before we know what the court has to say. But again, oral arguments coming up in November. Would love to talk with you after the oral arguments. Get your reaction to what we heard there.
Sure, sign me up.
Excellent. Hey, thank you again for coming on the program. It is so good to talk with you. Robert Nash, again, one of the main plaintiffs in New York State Rifle and Pistol Association versus Bruin. talking with us here on Bearing Arms Cam and Company.